Hi, Mitzi Van Cleve again. I'm here to do my second talk about OCD and panic disorder on my YouTube channel. I thought about talking in sequence, like what came next as far as my story, but I've really decided that I would just kind of jump around from different topics that I have in my book and different things that people might find interesting or actually helpful concerning dealing with anxiety disorder and OCD. So these talks are kind of random and out of order and kind of at my whim, I guess, as to what I want to speak about. This week I was just thinking about something that usually confuses people about OCD. You hear that thrown around so much these days. People say, "Oh, I'm so OCD," and I guess that there does need to be some clarity about what that means. And so I'm going to try to clarify a little bit in this talk about OCD, but more specifically, I want to talk about the causation of OCD in a person or an individual, how it develops. OCD mainly involves thoughts and thought patterns that become obsessional over time, in that they're stuck in a person's mind, and these thoughts are generally of a disturbing nature that creates a question, a doubt, something that they feel like they've really got to figure out or solve or check, a worry, a fear. And as a particular obsession gets a hold in the mind, it will be there, pretty much all the time, as far as plaguing the person. And with that comes a need to try to do something to minimize the anxiety. And so that's where the compulsion side of OCD comes in. And typically people think of OCD as the kind of thing where people wash their hands a lot because they're concerned about germs or contamination, and that is a form of OCD, but it's really very narrow as far as when you're trying to think about what OCD does and what it causes. OCD can involve just the thought processes. It can be mental, and all of the compulsive side of it can be in the form of rumination, and that's the kind of OCD that I have. It's thoughts that are disturbing or plaguing, and that I've dealt with over the years. And there's been some compulsive stuff, like when I was younger, where I would actually do an outwardly compulsive thing to try to minimize the anxiety. But the thing with OCD is, the more you attend to the thought by trying to do something to undo it or reassure yourself, the more it gets stuck in the brain. Because by attending to it, you're paying attention to it, and you're teaching your brain, this is urgent, this is important, pay attention to it. So, I don't know if that, helps out a little bit, but it's just kind of a very brief overview of what OCD is like. I want to talk about how this all gets going, though, and that was what I want to talk about tonight. I guess I've read a few books on anxiety, and a few books by Christians, and some books that aren't written by Christians. And some of the books which talk about anxiety, and in particular the ones written by Christians, they seem to misunderstand how the whole process of OCD, and particularly my type, which is like the purely obsessional type, gets going in the person. They might think that you're worried about a specific thing, like someone is sick and you're really concerned about them, or financial concerns, or something that's actually a valid concern, and that you start thinking about that and fretting about it, and really not giving it to God, and just kind of trying to sort it out yourself, and not praying about it, and not having faith about it, and all those kinds of things. And that the more you worry about it, that eventually you become obsessive about it, and you have OCD. But that's really not how it goes at all. There's a huge difference between just having a valid concern or worry that you're unable to let go of because you think God is not going to be able to handle it, and an OCD. OCD can only start in a person if their mind is already kind of primed to be upset about something. For me, when OCD flares up, I'm already in a state where I'm having a lot of problems with anxiety. I call it free-floating anxiety. There's just an overall feeling or sense of dread. I start to have physical symptoms of stomach aches, insomnia, muscle tension, just all sorts of things. There can be mild trembling, and this is because the center of my brain that controls fight or flight is basically misfiring and sending out too many of those signals that are only supposed to be there in a valid emergency or where there's something very urgent. So I'm already in that state. And I've thought about, try to think about analogies to try to explain kind of what that's like. And one way that I can explain that is I feel like my brain is in fly trap mode. It's open, and it's so anxious, but it doesn't have anything specific to be anxious about, and its jaws are wide open, and it's very, very upset, and it's in this hyped up state of, what am I upset about? I don't know, I'm upset. And I don't really say that verbally, I just feel it. It's just a feeling of anxiousness. So I have this flytrap brain because I have OCD, and when that misfiring is kind of going on and I'm in that hyped up state of anxiety, which can be going on before an actual obsession starts for weeks or months, before I start up with an obsession. Well, anyway, so I have this flytrap brain, and in comes the fly, which is the thought or the obsession. And for me, that's been, I'm trying to think of one specifically. It might be a health obsession. Let's say because, I've been having stomach aches with my anxiety. I might wake up in the night with my stomach's really hurting bad. Now, that could happen at any other time in my life. I could have a stomach bug or just ate something bad, and I would just deal with it. I would be sick or not feel good, take something until I felt better, throw up, whatever, and get over it. But when my mind is in this flytrap mode, the thought, what's wrong with my stomach, suddenly becomes bigger. And what if this is something serious? I remember back in the day, my aunt had an ulcer, and what if it's that? What if I have an ulcer and I just don't know about it? I mean, this is really painful. And I start thinking about the possibility, the what if. And see, that's a question, a doubt that's kind of hanging there. So I might mull that over for a while, and I might weigh it out. Well, you haven't had any signs of an ulcer, you haven't seen any bleeding, you were to the doctor just a month ago, and I'm sure they would have noticed something. They ran a bunch of blood tests, your blood levels were normal, so it's probably not that. But the more I do that, the more I focus on it and try to reassure myself, what happens is that flytrap brain clamps down on that thought. And because it finally has something to do with all that excess anxiety. So it clamps down on it. It's kind of like, okay, that'll do, I'll take that. I'll be upset about that. And so from there on, what might happen is I might not get up the next day and my stomach's still kind of bothering me, because anxiety causes a lot of different physical sensations, like nausea and stomach upset, and maybe this morning it's worse than ever, and so I can't eat, and I start to think, well, maybe it's something else. What's causing this lack of appetite? Maybe there's something serious wrong with me. And so I start going down this path of health obsessions, and this is a kind of OCD that you just call, health OCD, health obsessions. And OCD can take on all sorts of different obsessional themes, like obsessions about fear of about something happening to a loved one, obsessions about what if I go crazy and harm myself or harm a loved one, or obsessions about faith, which is I call religious OCD, which for me is really kind of a relationship OCD, because the relationship that feels threatened is that of my Savior. But anyway, as I begin to seek reassurance, like for these health obsessions, I might, for instance, get on the computer and kind of do a little bit of my own research, look up ulcers. What are the symptoms of ulcers? And I might see, you know, they might give 20 symptoms, and I might go down the list and read them all and find that I have barely any of them, but maybe one or two. And with OCD, just those one or two can leave that feeling of doubt still there, to the point where I might feel, well, that's not enough reassurance. I've got to go get more reassurance. So I might start looking for more reassurance. And the mental rumination just goes on. And there are times where, I would say to myself, this is silly. You have to stop this. You don't have an ulcer. That's just ridiculous. But even that, even saying, stop, you don't have an ulcer, this is ridiculous, is a form of reassurance. And with OCD, any kind of attending to the doubt or the question or the theme causes it to become more and more stuck. And the fly trap has just got a hold of that fly, that thought, and it won't let it go. And so that's kind of how it gets started in a person. And all I can say is the more you attend to those thoughts, the more attention you give to them, the worse the disorder becomes. And so the secret to learning to manage it is learning how to open up the fly trap and release the thoughts, which is something that is just the opposite of how you really think you should react to the thoughts. And I think I'll be getting into that in the next talk that I do. But basically, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what it's like and how OCD starts, and kind of clarify that if it weren't for the misfiring that is there in the anxiety center of the brain, which is the amygdala, these thoughts wouldn't be able to get a hold of us the way they do. So there's more to it than just worrying ourselves up into a tizzy, which is what a lot of people think. And a lot of people think you ought to be able to just let go of that. The anxiety that attends these thoughts is just unbelievable, and that's what tricks us. That's my cat's tail, sorry about that. That's what tricks us and tricks the brain into thinking that they're very, very urgent. So anyway, that's what I want to talk about tonight. I hope I was a little bit clear in my explanation, and I'll be back and we'll talk some more about something else. Thank you. Bye-bye.